Thank you all for joining our webinar today to learn about the essentials for driving sales through social selling. My name is Liz, in case you don't know me, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at MediaDev. As you may already know, MediaDev is a marketing firm specialized in outreach programs for independent software vendors. So we've been working for over 20 years to help software companies promote their brands, recruit partners, generate sales leads, and increase visibility for their products, both on and offline. Today, we're going to cover the following points on this agenda, starting off with how to initiate a social selling strategy, how social selling can help you identify and nurture leads, how you can push leads down the sales funnel over time, how to measure the success of a social selling program, and why outsourcing this activity can be beneficial for your organization. As I said earlier, you might have questions during the presentation, but we'd prefer that you wait until the end. We will have a Q&A session probably for about the last 5 minutes, and you have a chat box that you can use for that purpose later on. So let's just dive right in. Just so that we're clear on what social selling is, because it can mean different things to different people. Social selling is an organic one-on-one outreach initiative designed to engage individual prospects on social media platforms with the purpose of building relationships with those people over time. Of course, when targeting prospects in the B2B space, the preferred platform for this kind of outreach. But it shouldn't be confused with paid in-mail messaging, which is a form of sponsored content or advertising. And it's also not pure social media marketing, which is more about establishing visibility for your brand on a broader scale. So social selling is a highly targeted outreach method designed to construct a nurture engine to get content in front of your target audience and to initiate a dialogue online. So again, it uses social networking platforms as a basis for starting that conversation and creating a relationship with individual members of your target audience. As any part of social selling strategy comes what we call social listening, which is a very big part of the equation. As with any relationship, if you're the one doing all the talking, the person you're speaking to is going to lose interest and walk away. So social selling is going to help you as a software vendor to better understand the needs of your target audience, what's important to them and why, how people react to your brand, and it should give you insights as to how you can position your product accordingly. You'd really be amazed at how much information you can get from prospects if you actually listen and pay attention to what they post, what groups they're part of, the conversations they start. You can get deep insight, and you can also use it as a way of gaining market intelligence. So social selling has become a must-have resource for sales, mainly because so much of the buyer journey is completed by the prospect on their own before a sales rep even gets involved. Information, as we know, is at the tip of everyone's fingers, but people really engage with the brands that they've come to know and trust. So social selling is really a means of creating a relationship with your prospects, and engaging, listening, and interacting with them regularly should help naturally encourage them to trust you over time, so that when the prospect is ready, they know where to turn and who to contact. Of course, building your network is the key to the process, and again, it doesn't happen overnight. But the bottom line is that social selling as a method is proven successful, and those who engage in it regularly sell more than those who don't. So the very first step when you decide you want to create a social selling strategy is to do your research. It's very important to understand the types of prospects you want to target and why, whether this be specific job titles or certain functions within a particular type of organization, or those coming from a priority list of accounts that you've determined have high potential. Social selling can be really great with accounts-based marketing. But conducting an audit is really the first step because it's going to help you understand what groups your buyer personas are part of, what forums you can tap into, whether or not you need to create a dedicated group of your own, perhaps with the help of a community manager. It can help you determine too what existing content you have that you can leverage as part of your outreach, what you need to do in order to enhance visibility for your offer online in parallel. So whether or not you go the group route, you need to create a content calendar for the social seller profile that you do create. And if you do decide to go the dedicated group or showcase page route, you'll need a separate content calendar for that as well. As your network of prospects is built over time, posting content on the individual thread or feed of that profile is going to help establish legitimacy for the profile, and it will also help get your content seen by more people. If you are driving membership to a showcase page, you'll want a variety of different types of content to be posted on that page on a regular basis, so that members are exposed to it as part of their news threads. And you can also have your social seller profile repost posts from a showcase page as well. Creating a message tree for direct in-mail outreach is going to help initiate that first contact with a new prospect. You want to make sure, of course, not to sound too salesy in the beginning, and the message tree should work to get prospects to a point where in time they'll confirm their interest in a meeting. So for sure you want to avoid being overly direct in the first message. It can be really tempting to get straight to the point, but it can really be a turnoff if right away you're bombarding people with sales messages. So you want to take those important steps to educate prospects about your offer and highlight the what's in it for me kind of messaging for prospects when sharing content in order to get the ball rolling. We recommend that in the initial messages you show an interest in what the prospect is doing and that you want to learn more about that person. In order to do that, you need to look at the prospect's activity, their posts, maybe articles that they've written. You understand a little bit about what they do or the company that they work for. And this will help you pinpoint some kind of commonality between you and the prospect. And that's going to help you create that, common ground. The idea is that you need to present yourself in such a way that suggests that you connecting with that person is going to be mutually beneficial for one another in order for you to network. You don't want it to be all one-sided. So it's important to personalize those messages. And the message tree really is just a guide. It shouldn't become a standard copy paste every time you reach out to someone. You don't want to have generic messages. They really don't work. It's kind of like a call script in telemarketing. You create one to give you an outline of where you want the conversation to go. But like with a script, you can't read it word for word. The same is true with social selling outreach. You can't just copy and paste the same message all the time. And actually with LinkedIn algorithms, you can have the suspicious activity be flagged when you do a copy paste all the time because they consider you to be like a bot. This next slide visualizes the process of a social selling campaign. So as I said, you start off with an audit, you begin to profile your target audience and reach out to them to connect using the message tree that you've designed. Then you post content regularly on your thread, in groups, or on a showcase page so that your audience can be exposed to your value proposition and start to get to know your offer. From there, you engage on a one-on-one level with your audience, making sure to be attentive to who they are as a person. Sometimes we forget in the B2B space that prospects are people too. You may want to do business with an account, but in order to do that, you need to engage with the right people within those accounts. It's also important that you build your profile around your brand. Again, with that what's in it for me kind of messaging. People look at profiles pretty quickly before they decide whether or not to connect. So you don't want to focus on, you know, your job responsibilities like a CV. I think people do that more when they're looking to get a job, but not when they're looking to do social selling. The rest of a social selling program is how you can define and measure success, and of course the benefits that you should get out of it, namely freeing up your sales team so that they can convert leads into sales. But I'll get into that, into more detail about that in a few minutes. One thing to keep in mind is that social selling is not going to help you identify hundreds of qualified sales leads overnight. In fact, in a lot of ways, cold calling is probably a faster method of getting leads since it's really a numbers game. The more calls you make, the more likely it is that you'll get a lead. However, you know, with social selling, you're working to build a network of prospects that will become highly qualified business opportunities in the mid to long term because they'll be better informed about your offer than they would be off of one cold call. Another thing to keep in mind is that the more contacts you have, the more you'll be able to add, since you'll have a higher probability of having contacts in common with your contacts. It's important to build a profile with at least 500 connections to be considered legitimate on LinkedIn. And for LinkedIn algorithms, again, it's important that your network be somewhat tight, meaning your contacts are also connected with one another. Otherwise, again, you'll be flagged as having suspicious activity. One tip in order to do that is to make sure that you look at the contacts of your contacts. And if they're part of your target audience, you can connect with those people too. Not only is this going to help create legitimacy, but it can also be a starting point of a discussion. So, hey, Steve, I see you're connected with Sally, and I thought I'd reach out because this is also great when doing accounts-based marketing because it'll help you build a lot of relevant connections within your priority list of accounts. Obviously, cultural norms need to be taken into consideration when you reach out to prospects in countries other than your own. I know, for example, in Germany, you wouldn't start, you know, a conversation necessarily by using someone's first name unless you'd already, you know, been introduced to them or had an established relationship with that person. So the outreach does need to be adapted for culture. I know in the US, you know, people are generally on a first name basis right away at the start of a conversation. You know, they're very informal kind of exchange, especially on social media, but that's not true everywhere. So you need to pay attention to that. And local language outreach is obviously also important for certain markets. And your social sellers should take that into consideration, have language skills, and also, of course, no matter what, they really need to know the topic inside and out. Nurturing prospects really means that you're creating opportunities to reach back out and get in touch with them to take the conversation to the next level, which for social selling usually means an initial phone appointment followed by a face-to-face meeting, but it could also mean getting a prospect to download a free trial or attend a webinar. The call to action is really for you to define based on the relationship that you've established with each individual person. You know, again, we feel that it's best to have a highly personalized outreach. The more personalized, the better. And again, getting back to social listening, reading the posts or the comments made by your prospects can be a way to get your foot in the door. Hey, I saw that you posted an article about this topic, and I'd really be interested in talking to you further about that. Spot basis telemarketing can also be a way to take the conversation to the next level or to punctually nurture a prospect, especially if they don't respond to some of your in-mail messages. So since you've already established a connection on LinkedIn, though, it's easier to get somebody's attention on a call. And the call really should inspire a dialogue between you and the prospect. So you can prompt them by asking some important qualifying questions as a way of getting the ball rolling. And again, you want to make sure always to end with that next step. What's the call to action? that needs to be there so that the relationship just doesn't end. In order to maximize the use of social selling, you should integrate it as part of a holistic marketing program. So for example, if you're hosting a webinar, you can send personalized messages to prospects via InMail, inviting them to attend. You can make several posts over the course of a few weeks on your profile thread or your showcase page to entice your network to register. You can use the social selling as a platform to provide your prospects with valuable content, and then you want to encourage them to engage with that content. So in order to push leads down the funnel, you need to list out those qualifying questions you need answers to. And some of those questions you'll be able to get answers with social listening, but others will need to be asked outright during a phone conversation, as I spoke about a few minutes ago with spot-based telemarketing, for example. For us, the engagement on InMail, should help slowly push the prospect to accept that phone meeting. Because by that time, the prospect should already be somewhat warmed up. They know who you are. They should know the topic of discussion. And it takes the cold out of cold calling, essentially. But again, you don't want to have a hard sales approach to social selling. You need to build your personal brand around your company brand. And if people see you as just being this pushy sales guy, they're not going to respond or engage. So social selling is absolutely going to take longer to get leads than cold calling, but it should help you close the sales deal 10 times faster because you've already established a relationship and built rapport with the prospect along the way. If you use the traditional standard, ROI calculation where you just take the number of sales and divide them by the cost of the campaign and see which one is higher, I think you're missing out on some other important benefits of social selling. So I think first, in order to really be able to determine the KPIs to measure the success of a social selling initiative, you need to understand what you're going to get out of it besides pure sales. So some of the benefits can include reducing the amount of time it takes for you to identify key decision makers and navigate through accounts because you have access to so many people on the social media platforms. You'll also be able to build a really solid list of data on your target audience, and that should really be increasing on a daily basis. So again, some other things to keep in mind when determining the success of a social selling initiative could be, establishing a foothold in a list of strategic accounts as part of an ABM program. Could be about market intelligence, building a solid sales pipeline, educating your target audience about your solutions, increasing visibility for your offer in a particular niche. So again, social selling is revolved around engagement. What prospects are engaging with your content and how are they engaging with it? Are they liking your content? Are they sharing it? Have you seen an increase in the number of followers to your social media pages? Is the sales team happy with the quality of the leads that they've been given to follow up? For me, it's very, very important that the sales team you have internally are involved in the discussion so that they know what to expect out of the program and they can also give their feedback about the quality of the leads afterwards. But what's sure is that you need to study all of those types of parameters so that you can determine for your own social selling initiative the specific KPIs that make sense for your business. And if the social selling is done right, you should start to see results within a few weeks. So you didn't think you were going to get through an entire webinar without any kind of sales pitch, did you? No, but seriously, social selling is really a lot of work. I've spoken to so many companies that say to me, yeah, but our internal sales team is supposed to be doing social selling, so I don't see the point in outsourcing it. And my question to that is, yeah, okay, they're supposed to be doing social selling, but are they really doing it? It takes a ton of time and effort and energy to build a network and sustain it over time. It takes monitoring groups, social listening, liking other people's posts, creating your own, being on top of newsworthy events that could make a particular message to a particular prospect important at a particular point in time. You need to source contacts, research companies, use multi-channel outreach in order to engage. And from my experience, a lot of people say they're doing social selling or they're supposed to be, but they're not really. I mean, just going onto LinkedIn from time to time for a few minutes a day is not social selling. So the random email message sent here and there to a prospect, it's really not social selling. So outsourcing this can help free up your sales reps for those face-to-face meetings. Let them do the selling, but give the legwork to somebody else who can do that part of the equation for them. If your sales reps have more time to do demos or presentations, write proposals, or create proof of concepts, you'll convert more and you'll convert faster. So outsourcing the activity can have its benefits, and it should really enable your sales team to be able then, like I said, to follow up highly qualified sales leads with prospects who are already rather far along in the buyer journey. So to conclude, first and foremost, do your homework. You need to research to determine who are the best buyer personas to target and why. You need to determine where those people are, which groups they're in, what channels you can tap into. You need to determine what content you should use, whether or not you need to create new content or a group of your own. And you need to determine how you can leverage other marketing activities, both on and offline, so that you have inbound and outbound efforts in place at the same time. We really believe that having a holistic approach to marketing will help improve the results of your social selling program. So leveraging other campaigns as part of your social selling strategy can help you get the most bang for your buck. Okay, so thanks for listening to that presentation. I hope that that was useful for you. I'd like to open up the floor now to some questions. Again, there's a chat box that should be on the lower right-hand side of your screen. So I'll give everyone a minute or so to type some questions, and then of course I'll do my best to answer them. All right, Dexter has written, how many accounts or profiles do I need to effectively do social selling? How do they have to be paid? Do they have to be paid with premium accounts? So the number of profiles really depends on the markets that you want to cover. So like I said earlier, if you are looking to reach out to many different countries, for example, maybe across EMEA or APAC, you may need to have local language outreach as part of your strategy. So it's really bad. I mean, you can combine certain, geographical zones and cover it in English, but I think it really depends, again, on what resources you have, what languages you can cover, what type of content you also have in those local languages. And it's definitely best that they be premium accounts or part of a sales navigator team. And the reason for that is that you get enhanced features that you can use to really help you pinpoint your target and help with your outreach. So we definitely recommend having an upgraded premium account if you're serious about social selling. So I hope that answers your question, Dexter. Thanks for that. If there are other people that have questions, don't be shy. And also just one other point too about the number of accounts. It's really not so much about how many accounts, but more about how many contacts you're able to add to those accounts. Okay, we've got another question. So within what time frame do you typically start to see the results of a social selling campaign? It usually takes a few weeks to build up the contacts you have in your profile. I mean, when you start out on LinkedIn, obviously, the first few connections that you're going to add, will help then, again, to get you to be able to build that network. So usually it takes about 2-3 weeks to really start building up the network itself, where you're able in parallel to reach out to prospects. We've seen with some social selling programs that we've run for clients that we get qualified sales leads within the very first month. So it's not that you have to wait, endless amount of time in order to get those sales leads, but there really is a kind of momentum that takes place. So you start it out, and then there comes a point where, it's slow in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you start getting results, much, much faster afterwards. So Jasper, I hope that answers your question. Anybody else with questions? Okay, we've got some other people writing. How often in a week is it advisable to write something about the product that you're selling? That's a really good question. So I think posting regularly is important in your thread. So I would say two times a week minimum is good. You can also do some A/B testing and experiment at different times and see if the reactivity changes, whether you post it in the morning, the afternoon. I know for myself, I usually post things around 11 o'clock in the morning, my time, if I'm looking to target EMEA. And then probably a little bit later if I have something that's kind of addressing more of a US audience, because they're going to connect to LinkedIn later in the day. But, I would say twice a week is pretty good. But it's also about going daily onto, the social selling profile and liking the posts of other people, like I said, engaging with the content that your contacts are posting. And also taking the opportunity to send people specific messages on InMail that may direct them to download a new ebook or a free trial or something, webinar, something that you think could interest them for a particular reason. So that's also part of the outreach as well. Anybody else have any questions? We're actually right after half an hour. Okay, great. Another question. You can engage by email posts, but how often does email marketing post result in a significant number of relevant leads? I think, I can't give you an exact correlation in terms of, posting and then leads or in-mail messaging and then leads. I do know, though, that again, using social selling as a nurture engine in order to establish relationships with people, means that you will be able to use this process in order to get people to confirm their interest in having a phone conversation. And then in that phone conversation, that's when you're also going to be able to really qualify all of the information that you need in order to determine that this is indeed a very good sales lead. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I don't think you can say, oh, I only have to send out 10 messages and then I'm going to absolutely get a lead. No, it really depends on the prospect. And because it's such an individualized process, you could have one or two in-mail exchanges with somebody that immediately wants to have a call because they're ready. Or, it could take many messages with somebody that doesn't respond, and then you have to trigger that spot basis telemarketing that I mentioned during the presentation in order to really determine, okay, well, is this person at all thinking about this topic, or is, this not the right time? And maybe it'll be that, this person is connected with you because it's something they're thinking about for next year. But that's okay. Then they'll know who to contact in a year when they are ready to go that next step. Do we have any other questions? Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, then thank you again all for joining. We'll send you a link where you can download a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, and you will also get a recording of the webinar. Don't forget to visit our website at MediaDev.com, where you can find lots of articles and other videos about social selling that are included in our resource library. So again, MediaDev.com, you can get access to all of that there. And you can also write me at contact@MediaDev.com, or many of you probably already have my email, which is actually in front of you right now. So you can write me should you have any additional questions or want to talk about social selling in more detail. So thanks everyone for joining today. Appreciate it. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care. Thank you. Bye.